Sup, ladies and gentlemen, Acklon here, and of course, welcome back to a more old school video. You know, this is how we used to do it, just me and you, sitting down, having a bit of a chat about World of Warcraft, lore, speculation, all that stuff. And now, with Secrets of the Reach, the cinematic that came out, as well as 10.1 being on the PTR, there's so much information going around and so many threads to pull on to come up with some really cool speculation theories of what exactly is going on here. So we're going to do a deep dive into specifically the power source of Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible. You know, in order to get there, we're going to go through some history, some Naltharian history, and the like. To all of the patrons and YouTube members, thank you so much for your support. Without you, videos like this one would absolutely not be possible. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump straight into it, shall we? Before we can do anything, we have to talk about Naltharian. Naltharian was very, very good friends with Malygos very specifically, and eventually with all of the aspects. They became very close, especially during their fight with Galakrond, and I'm not going to go into the history of that fight and how exactly that worked, but very much since the beginning, Naltharian was set up to be a fighter. He enjoyed fighting, sometimes to the dislike of Malygos, a creature that never ran from a fight, but definitely did not invite it. The books make very clear that Naltharian invited fights, and he sometimes just involved himself in fights, even if it had nothing to do with him. So very much after, you know, they became the aspects, and specifically Naltharian became the Earth Warder, he was considered the protector of the flights. He was the one that would go out and wage war against the enemies of the flights. And we already know now that part of this, for him at least, was experimentation, trying to build armies. Now, the exact reason for these armies, you'll see as we go through a lot of the information today, becomes darker and more twisted as time goes on, and you are left with a kind of question of what exactly was Naltharian building, and more specifically, when did Naltharian stop building, and when did Deathwing take over? That is a huge question here. But anyways, at some point, it was still Naltharian. Now, thanks to a lot of the interviews that we've now seen, we know that part of what we see in Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible, is Deathwing's ultimate fall to madness, his sort of descent into madness. And I actually kind of believe that this is as a result of a lot of his experiments. So I'm going to share with you what the Dungeon Journal had to say about this, and then we'll sort of move on. Before the name Deathwing was whispered in terror, Naltharian was known as the Earth Warder. During this time, the aspect of Earth used his power to construct a massive hole deep beneath the surface, where he accumulated secret knowledge. A visage of the Black Dragon still resides within the Crucible, waiting for an opportunity to continue the work started so long ago, at any cost. It's interesting, the wording here. The aspect of Earth used his power to construct a massive hole. At this point, he is not yet known as Deathwing. So the wording here at least suggests that when he constructed Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible, he was not yet corrupted, at least in full, by the old gods. Before Deathwing, there were many attempts to infuse a subject with Shadow Flame. The only one that survived was Khazarah, driven mad by the excruciating pain inflicted by her Elementian plates. She now serves as the ferocious guardian of the Shadowed Crucible. Now, we also know, thanks to interviews, that Shadow Flame is a direct result of Deathwing's experiments. The question becomes why? Why was Naltharian so obsessed with creating the Shadow Flame? And you'll see that Shadow Flame actually plays a massive part in the experimentation in the Shadowed Crucible. There's quite a few bosses that actually have this Shadow Flame theme around them. And then, of course, Deathwing himself is said to have been infused with this power. Could it be simply that fire is one of the most powerful elements on Azeroth, and Shadow, the thing of the void, if you could merge those, you would create a phenomenal power source? Or could there be something even deeper into that? Sadly, that's not a speculation theory that I have ready for you guys. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But anyways, the creation of Shadowflame destroyed countless elementals. Now, only the strongest remain: Kroskoth and Moltania, one of Shadow, the other Fire. These powerful elementals combine their powers to create a force of ultimate destruction. To those of you that's wondering what the hell are we talking about here, if you remember throughout, almost every single expansion where there's been a quote-unquote Void Lord in the fight, they're very much just void elementals, which maybe gives us some insights into the void itself, but never you mind that. That's never actually officially been confirmed, but it's clear that Deathwing summoned a void elemental from the void and then took a fire elemental in order to create what would ultimately become Shadowflame. And eventually, by the end of this fight, this is massive spoiler territory, by the way, by the end of this raid, Sekhireth himself falls to this Shadowflame corruption, accepts the void into his heart, so to speak. On the road to develop Drakthir, there were many failures. Some of these early versions were too volatile to destroy, and instead kept dormant to protect the world from their brutality. Now they awaken to test their prowess against the champions of Azeroth. The reason I went through all of this suggests a timeline. The question is, a timeline to what? A timeline to the fall of Deathwing? Could it be that by this point, the Shadowflame and the experimentation with Shadowflame, that Deathwing had already been born? Or was this still Malfarian? And if this was still Malfarian, the bigger question becomes, what was he doing? What was the purpose of these armies? Why was he trying to create an army with Shadowflame? Could it be that Malfarian knew about the old gods, knew about their plans, knew about their corruption, and the idea for Malfarian very much was to use their very power against them? So kind of like a twisted, tortured hero aspect here, or arc, where using their own power infused with the power of fire would ultimately create a weapon that could destroy them. I'm just sort of spitballing here because I genuinely don't know. Now we get on to the very, very interesting bits here. The ancient power source. Rashok, once a great leader of the Zakali, was imprisoned within these halls for millennia. His molten blood constantly siphoned to power the crucible. The Elder was kept on the brink of death, driving him mad. Due to the recent chaos, Rashok has broken his restraints and seeks revenge on any that cross his path. For those of you that don't quite know what we're talking about here, maybe you haven't played up until that point in the story yet for Dragonflight, there is something to be said about the Jordan. So let's just do a little bit of historical background here. Very little of Jordan history is actually known. They're not a culture that seems to favor writing, so there's not going to be very many journals lying around, very many annals of their history. They are a warrior culture. Much of what makes you a Jordan is your prowess over earth and fire, but then also just your raw strength. And they spend most of their time trying to figure out who is the strongest. Very early on in the Jordan's history, they were broken up into fractured tribes, and these tribes really fought quite heavily against one another. And then one of the elders of one of the tribes managed to bring all the other tribes and their elders together, and combining their power, these elders of these tribes managed to burrow deep within Azeroth. And it is said that once they emerged from within Azeroth, they emerged with incredible devastating control over fire and earth. In fact, we know it was devastating because when the dragons attacked the Jordan, even though the Jordan were outnumbered, the dragons found themselves outmatched against the Jordan and their incredible use of fire and earth magic. The question, of course, becomes, where does this prowess come from? The easy answer here would be, well, Ragnaros and Therazane. You know, the elders discovered the elemental planes of Ragnaros and Therazane, and because Ragnaros and Therazane wished to be free, they sort of chose the Jordan as their ultimate champions, if you will. This suggests also that the elements do not like the fact that the Primal Incarnates use their power. For whatever purpose, it could just be that they want that power back, and that's why, but we know that the Jordan absolutely hates the dragons. Now, in terms of their hatred, they hate the aspects a little more than they hate the other dragons, but they're currently allied with the Primal Incarnates, and according to their storytelling, once the aspects are destroyed, they'll just then start hunting the Primal Incarnates. So that will be the final enemy that they need to destroy. That's sort of the Jordan's thing. They want a world with no dragons. And that might actually be due to a very ancient pact that they made in order to emerge with this power. Nevertheless, once they came back, they taught their followers this power, how to wield earth and fire, and that's where the Jordan come from. Remember what Iridikron said here. In that cinematic, Iridikron explained, the Crucible is not important to us. It's not Aberrus that matters. What matters is the ancient power source. Now, I'll take you back. We know that Iridikron likes deals. Nosdormu told us that he struck terrible deals towards the end in order to further the Primalist cause. So much so that his own kin don't even know about most of the deals that he had struck. It is possible that one of the deals Iridikron struck was with the Elders. The question, of course, becomes, how? This Aberrus was meant to be a secret facility, yet Iridikron knew exactly where to find it. Not only did he know exactly where to find it, he knew exactly where to find the device. Of course, we don't know what that device does, although I think I know what this device does. But we'll get to that in a second. I think Iridikron's been here before. I think that's where this deal came from. He met with Rashok, and Rashok promised him that he would help him if he helped him destroy the Shattered Crucible, or at least help him escape the Shattered Crucible. Now, how do you think the Jordan is going to react? Remember, one day their elders just disappeared. They don't know what happened to their elders. We now know. It seems the aspects took their elders. The Jordan have been a shadow of their former self since the fall of their elders, or the disappearance of their elders. So the Jordan, the aspects may have just created a rather unpleasant enemy for themselves within the next patch, which is going to be very interesting because the Jordan may just be my favorite out of all of the races introduced in the Dragon Isles, at least currently. It might be overtaken by the Niffin, just because I really like him. But never mind. No, I think the Jordan is going to remain my favorite. Okay, so there's one more thing that I wanted to show you guys before we end this video. So far, I don't exactly know what Rashok is all about, but I needed to mention this because I know a lot of you follow this channel for the information on lore, so I would have been remiss if I didn't at least give you this information. I want to show you guys this because I think I know what this is.
Aberrus.
We spoke about this device, and we spoke about the runes. Now, listen to Iridikron's words here.
Yet the pain he inflicted was only the beginning.
That's very interesting to me. Yet the pain he inflicted was only the beginning. He's speaking about the betrayal of Nalfarian, what Nalfarian ultimately did, and how that broke the Dragonflights. And before you go, what do you mean, Akalon? Okay, so I don't think many of you understand. Nalfarian's betrayal didn't just lead to Nalfarian sort of leaving the aspects. Nalfarian's betrayal ultimately led to the madness of Malygos. So when Nalfarian betrayed his fellow flights, they lost two of their brothers. They lost both Nalfarian and Malygos, because after that, Malygos just descended into utter madness. For good reason, Nalfarian's betrayal actually decimated the Blue Flight, almost to the point of extinction. So Malygos was driven crazy, and eventually Malygos had to be put down himself. So really, for the aspects, this was a terrible blow. But Iridikron explains that that was only the beginning. In fact, his betrayal was just the start of everything. Now, I want to sort of give you guys a quick insight here into one of the fights. This is the fight with Nalfarian's Visage. Remember, we spoke about the Visage that wants to continue it. It seems like there's a very similar sort of fight to Blackwing Lair. Class callouts. During the fight, different classes will do different things based on Nalfarian's corruption. And all of these are things like Nalfarian forces the hunter to call corrupted pets from their stable, forcing them to attack. You have wild treachery. Nalfarian corrupts the rogue's natural treachery, causing him to shadow step to an ally every 10 seconds and stab them in the back for 166,000 physical damage. You have Nalfarian's corruption causes the priest's faith to falter, forcing them to erupt in a desperate scream every 6 seconds for 30 seconds, inflicting 29k shadow damage every 1 second to players and creatures within 0 yards, and causing them to run in fear for 6 seconds. The reason this is appropriate to the lore, I think it showcases the depths to which Nalfarian had already become corrupted. The fact that Nalfarian, just being in the same room as his Visage, was enough to completely drive you to madness, suggests the terrible influence the old gods had over Nalfarian really almost since the beginning. And this is where we get to, let's call it a bonker speculation theory, even though I do not believe it is. Iridikron claims that his betrayal was only the beginning, that there is something much larger at play. They immediately make it seem like Aberys is bigger than the betrayal. But Aberys really isn't the betrayal, I think. I think it's what Aberys was ultimately used for. Now, there is a whisper. 5 lanterns, now darkened. The flame they seek will light the Master's way. You all know the whispers. 5 keys to open the way, 5 torches to light the path. Last night I'm leveling my druid, and in the Ruby Shrine, in the life pools, Alexstrasza speaks about the Oathstone and how its light would have shone up in ancient times. Its light would have shone as a beacon for all to see. And I realize that's it. That's it. That's what this is, this device. Iridikron himself may not exactly know. But these runes, I believe that's what that is. It's the Oathstones. Nalfarian, in his corrupted state, tied the Oathstones to an entrance. He made an entrance for a Void Lord to enter into our realm. Because remember, it will light the Master's way. This is not the old gods. This would be the masters of the old gods. And I believe that's what that is. That's why the Oathstones will not react. Not fully. They won't come online fully. It's because they've been corrupted. And Nalfarian is going to use this to open the Master's way. One final bit of just information that I'll be throwing out there. There's a whisper, well, it's not even a whisper, it's in the journal about the Naga and Ajara, where it speaks about the children of the first flesh and that they must remember the deals that they had made, right? Their bargain. And my mind goes to the Jordan. Could the Jordan be the children of the first flesh? I'm going to leave you guys with that theory. We'll leave it on that note. I think this has been 22 minutes. It's been long enough. I really hope that you enjoyed this discussion. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're a patron or a YouTube member, thank you so much for your support. It really means the world to me. Remember to grab your hentai and naughty WoW stuff over on Patreon for literally $1 a month. That's all that is required. And then, of course, remember to hit the like button, guys, if you like this video, and also the subscribe button if you really want to see more videos like this one. As always, ladies and gentlemen, be kind to each other, be good to each other, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Bye.